the whole country is in mourning right now because of the Pulwama attack. 44 soldiers have been martyred. So we expect there will be retaliation, just like there was last time. But it does not seem to stop the other side from, perpetrating all these attacks. So there are three larger questions. One is the general question of how to tackle the Islamist threat. The second is how do we fix the problem of Kashmir? Because what we are seeing in the debates is that it is a political problem. Do you also feel this is a political problem? And third question is the larger question of how to deal with Pakistan.
Well, first of all, I must express my deep sorrow for the families of the bereaved Jawans and my condolences. This is the biggest terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir. It is the largest attack on the Indian state since the Mumbai attacks of 11 years ago. It is nothing short of an act of war, because when terrorist groups which have been designated as terrorist groups, which is Jaish-e-Mohammed by 10, 12 countries around the world and the UN, are allowed to freely operate in Pakistan, and they take credit and openly champion such attacks on the Indian state. It is nothing short of war, and respond we must. It is unsurprising because Pakistan is the most peculiar state where the army runs its foreign policy, especially on India, and the huge benefits that the army gets in that country is based on this so-called threat perception from India. The problem is that both India and Pakistan are nuclear countries, and a simple, straightforward war is not so simple and not so straightforward. We have to contain this threat of terrorism by many different attacks. So last time when we had similar attacks in Uri, we had surgical strikes which were quite effective in sending the message across. But now we have to find other ways of tackling this. Some of it must be diplomatic by constraining Pakistan. Some of it must be economic. And although India has withdrawn the most favored nation status, that alone is not enough. A lot more things have to be done. And also we must not be afraid of naming China, which is the main prop of Pakistan. Many Indian strategic thinkers consider that China uses Pakistan as a low-cost means of slowing down India, of constraining India. And we must face up to that issue. Having said that, you have brought up the issue of Islamist terrorism and political problem in Jammu and Kashmir. In Jammu and Kashmir, both are now combined because it has long been a political problem from the time of partition itself. Kashmir has been given certain special status in Indian constitution, which many Indians are today questioning. Whatever happened in partition, it happened with a certain set of rules that applied to all the states in India, all the princely states. Some went to Pakistan, some went to India. And whether you like it or not, those rules applied to everybody. And after that has happened, you have to go by the constitutional setup and not by trying to overthrow the state. Now, I would say this. In recent years, the political resistance in Jammu and Kashmir to India has also acquired tenets of Islamist terrorism. It is not just political, because you will see in recent years there are calls for a caliphate. There are few but noticeable voices of support for ISIS, for Daesh. This is not something that existed 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Now, when you talk about Islamist terrorism, the fact is, if you look at the terrorism around the world, which claims innocent lives, which causes so much damage and harm, it is dominated by those terrorists who openly show their allegiance to some form of Islam, and most of it is Wahhabi Islamism, one sect within Islam which has dominated the attitude that terrorism will achieve their objectives. Wahhabi Islamism is not the only source of terrorism, but it is the most dominant. There are other sources of terrorism, also other aspects of Islamic terrorism, and of course there are other kinds of terrorism in the world, but this is what dominates terrorism in the world, and we must face up to this challenge. We can't keep pretending that somehow India is immune from all of this. There is some good and bad news on this. If you look at the last, say, 18 years that the world has been focused on terrorism since 9/11. Now, we have been facing it for more than that, for 30 years. But in the last 18 years that the world has focused on terrorism, many in India have taken pride that not many Islamist terrorists from India have gone to join Al-Qaeda or gone to join ISIS. It is measured only in few dozens. Whereas even in small countries like Australia or like some European countries, many hundreds of such citizens have gone and joined terrorist groups. But that is beginning to change. You saw in Pulwama yesterday, it was a local person who was radicalized and was supplied by arms and weaponry by Jaish-e-Mohammed. They are openly claiming it, but it was a local person who carried out a suicide bombing. So this is a feature that is newly evolving in Jammu and Kashmir, and there is a threat in other parts of India, which we must take very seriously. And as I said at the beginning of the question, we must find different ways of constraining Pakistan and disincentivizing it from supporting this kind of terrorist attacks on India.